Look who's back at your most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. That could mean only one thing. It's the Money Stop. Freak Nation, Money Stop Mafia, look who's back. It's Cole, it's Steven, it's the Cusumano brothers, and we're back to bring you to Kansas. There's no place like Kansas. But Cole, before we dissect Kansas and go through all the great bets this week and all of our favorite prop bets and everything else, we got to talk about Ryan Blaney. YRB or RFB, whatever you want to call him right now. Ryan effing Blaney is going to the round of 8. And I don't think that's a surprise to us, but I think the dominant showcase that team put on was very impressive, especially considering how the Toyotas were the class of the field entering this round of 12. Well, now maybe it's the Penske show, isn't it?
Very well is looking like that. We kind of forecasted this as well. I mean, Ryan Blaney was one of my favorites for the race win. In addition to Joey Logano was a sleeper, both those drivers finished inside the top 5. Really strong showing for the Penske group. And the Toyotas, I'll be honest, they might have been the second best, but I would even argue that the HMS Chevys kind of turned it on. So all in all, we did a really good job with the analysis for this race. Got 3 of the top 5 drivers highlighted in this episode, including Chase Elliott, aforementioned, as well as 5 of the top 10 finishers with outlined by Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe, 2 of those JGR Toyotas. And then we also had a really good showing for the some value picks here. Had Ryan Preece finish top 15, Carson Hocevar once again, and Denny Hamlin finished 12th, which might not have made you a bunch of money from a betting sense, big money bets, but DFS definitely was worth a shot. Overall, really, really solid day for us here at the Money Stop. And, you know, the mile and a half saw our bread and butter, one of my favorite tracks on the circuit. And I cannot wait to get out there to make some money here in Kansas.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. This is kind of our bread and butter style track, that mile and a half intermediates. And I think I mentioned this last week too, with regards to the fact Hendrick was a little bit behind the program. I feel like these are the kinds of tracks that the drivers like William Byron have really flourished on over the past couple of years. So this is a race weekend where I really need to see it out of that group. And it is promising that they did just start to show some signs of life last week at Loudon. So that closes up the book on Loudon. We'll have more, probably look more back on this race when we get back to Phoenix, because this is a track obviously very similar. But as we turn to the middle race, or one of the middle races in this playoffs, Cole, pre-qualifying odds, Vegas still likes the Hendrick Chevys, and specifically, they like Young Money. They like Kyle Larson at plus 325. You got Denny Hamlin at plus 600, William Byron, who we just mentioned, at plus 700, Ryan Blaney's plus 750, and Christopher Bell rounds out the top 5 at plus 900. So as we kick off the favorites category here, Cole, we're going to figure out the starting lineup, 2:10 Eastern time on Saturday. Keep all that in mind. We're going to break this up into tiers. We're going to give you 12 drivers, 2 favorites per brother, 2 sleepers per brother, and 2 value picks per brother. That makes for 12. So without further ado, give me your 2 favorites this week.
You know, the sports books really like Kyle Larson. I love Kyle Larson this weekend. Young Money is going to bring big money to bettors this weekend. Coming off, finally, a top 10 showing in the playoffs, his first of the 4 races to open up this slate. First top 10 since the regular season finale, which is pretty insane to think about. Finished 7th, though, as the second best HMS Chevy in this race to Chase Elliott. And what's, I think, very telling to me is that he had an average running position of 6th in this race. That was his 3rd playoff race, actually, with an average running position inside the top 10. So we mentioned it, you know, in that opening round. Like, the finishes did not really indicate how well this team was running. So to see them put it together at a track that we really weren't very high on the Hendrick Chevys was very telling for me. And just to have those numbers in that opening round where they didn't have the results, I think it speaks volumes to the strengths of this team, and that there is still speed in that camp. And now we look at Kansas coming up this weekend. There is nobody better than Young Money. He is just the best, plain and simple, in this current car. He won here in the spring, actually dominated this race. And he's actually won 2 of the last 3 starts at this 1.5-mile track, making him the only 2-time winner with this current car at Kansas. He is also tied for the most top 10s with 6 in this 7 starts with this current car, 5 of which have been top 5s, also tied for most in the series. Most laps led by over 300 with 498, and the best average finish by a long shot with 6.3 at this track in 7 starts. So Young Money is money in the bank for Kansas this weekend. I love him for all props. Again, heavy favorite, plus 325 per bet MGM, and the most expensive driver in daily fantasy at $11,000, but for a great reason. That's a premium that I'm definitely willing to pay, given his laps leading total with this current car and his 2-time wins at this track. Another driver I have my eye on for both good and bad is going to be Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin is plus 600 for the race win this weekend, coming off a 12th place finish at Loudon. That marked back-to-back top finishes outside the top 10 for this team. But I think the big story to come from Loudon, the only story to come from Loudon really, was that there was a tussle between him and his teammate Ty Gibbs, and there's been a lot of talk around the sport that maybe this could be a big notch against Denny Hamlin going forward. Could this really derail his mindset going forward? I guess that remains to be seen, but there is a cause for a lot of optimism with this team because Denny Hamlin is the winningest active driver at Kansas with 4 in the Cup Series, his last coming in the spring of 2023. He had a mechanical issue this past spring, which snapped a 7-race top 10 streak, but that was only one of 3 DNFs in his 34 starts at this track. He has a 12.9 average finish, which is really, really solid when you consider that large sample size. So I do like that for a floor for Denny Hamlin. In the next gen, he's got a win, 2 runner-ups, and he is tied with Kyle Larson for the most top 10s and top 5s with 6 and 5 respectively. And he has the 3rd best average finish at 8.3. But I do want to also highlight here that beginning this weekend and next week at the Roval, Denny Hamlin's going to be without his crew chief and without a couple of pit crew members for the lost wheel at Bristol. So to couple with the fact that he had that controversy with his teammate at Loudon, he has the lack of ammunition on the pit crew side and atop the pit box for this weekend. So maybe a little bit of cause for concern. I would maybe look at the other 2 that you're going to mention as better favorites for the win than Denny Hamlin, but the stats speak for themselves. He's been one of the best in his career at this track. So plus 600 for the race wins, definitely worth considering. I would probably stay away from his $10,500 in daily fantasy, though.
Yeah, you basically gave me every reason to not take your suggestions, big bro. Like, we're talking about a guy that doesn't have his entire team in Denny Hamlin, and he's coming off back-to-back finishes outside the top 10. And in the case of Kyle Larson, we said all the same stuff last week, right? And he only finished 7th. So for me, at the value at Kyle Larson at plus 325, it doesn't feel worth the price to me. And I get the history for Denny Hamlin, but he's plus 600. I'm going to give you 2 favorites that both are better values, and I think they're better shots of the win because they're both hotter at this point in the playoffs in the season, starting with Seabell, who is plus 900. He is the best value of our favorites and valued at 10,200 in daily fantasy, coming off a 6th place finish at Loudon. That now makes for 3 straight top 10s, including the win. He also finished 2nd in the spring at Kansas, which is his best career finish at this track. So he's done it here, and he's done it recently. So Christopher Bell, a guy that, of course, is going to be somebody we talked about when we come to Kansas, especially when he's been as hot as he is. He has a 4-race top 10 streak here, and he only has 3 finishes outside the top 10 out of 11 starts at this track. Also has the 2nd most laps led in the next-gen era at this track with 4 poles and the 4th best average finish of 9.6. So not only is he hot now, he is great at Kansas in the next-gen. Like, you have every reason for Christopher Bell to be back in victory lane this week. I do think that, like we kind of touched on in the beginning of this episode, that there are some of the other teams maybe closing in a little bit on the Gibbs Toyotas, if last week was any indicator whatsoever. However, I think that when you look at the most consistent of those Toyotas in the playoffs, it's got to be Seabell, right? So I love his value at plus 900, even at the 5th most expensive driver and 5th shortest in odds. I love me some Christopher Bell in the playoffs, and especially this week. And you talk about hot drivers, you can't not talk about the guy that won last week's race. Ryan Blaney is plus 750 for the race win, 10,700 in daily fantasy. So if you are a little bit more keyed in on the Penske Fords, I think that Joey Logano gives you a lot of reasons to be excited in the playoffs, especially the last few weeks. But no one should excite you more than Ryan Blaney, whose win marked his 4th top 5 in a row. Who else can say that? He's also got 5 top 5s in his last 6 starts, including 2 wins. And he now leads the series in that category with 13 top 5s. And he is tied for the most top 10s at 17 of them. So you're talking about recent success. He's been probably the best driver over a 4, even a 6 race sample size, really. You're talking about a guy that has proven he can win. He's racing with a little bit less pressure on his shoulders after locking himself into the round of 8. And listen to the numbers at Kansas. He matched his career best finish here in the spring of 3rd. So I'm taking obviously a lot of stock into what we saw at Kansas in the spring, where Ryan Blaney has back-to-back top 5 finishes at this track, and he has no finish lower than 16th in the next-gen era, with the 5th best average finish in this generation of car at 9.7. So very similar reasons to choose Christopher Bell and or Ryan Blaney. I think that your choices of Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin, probably on one hand, they feel safer just because of who they are, right? It's Denny Hamlin, it's Kyle Larson. But when you dig a little deeper as to the values and the fact that they are a little bit more on the, I guess, the cheaper side, you're not going to win as much if you bet on either Kyle Larson or Denny Hamlin. I like the direction my drivers are headed more in Ryan Blaney and Christopher Bell, because they've already done it at Kansas this year and in the playoffs this season. So that's as good of a favorites category, especially with those two, as you could possibly think of.
I definitely threw Hamlin on here as more of a caution for this weekend, given the lack of ammunition on his crew. But I really do believe that Ryan Blaney is probably the best driver in the sport right now. I mean, 4 straight top 5s, 2 wins in the last 6 starts. That's just really, really damn good. Since he's been able to finish these races off, not get those DNFs like he had early in the season, he's been probably the best driver in the sport. Christopher Bell, I think he's definitely caught up to his JGR teammate in Chase Briscoe in being the top dog in that camp, and just finishing runner-up here last spring is going to be definitely a good notebook going forward for this weekend. But Kyle Larson, man, I don't know. I feel like you're shooting him down quite a bit here, but you're forgetting one thing here. I'm going to Chase Field tonight for NASCAR night.
Oh,
Kyle Larson's going to be there. On the field with him, doing an interview, and the SpeedFreaks mojo is very real. Whenever there's a driver, whatever the series may be, brought in on the show, they go out the next weekend or the following week, and they win the race. So I am taking a lot of stock in the SpeedFreaks mojo, which is very real, because Kenny put this in ChatGPT recently. ChatGPT knows what SpeedFreaks mojo is.
Really?
So it's a real thing. It's very real. Yeah.
What did ChatGPT say?
It said what I just said, basically. Whenever a driver has come on the show, they've gone on to win or do very well the following week. So
I'm going to need you to crunch the numbers on that, because I believe it. I feel like I've seen it, and I want the numbers to quantify it.
Well, we love numbers here, so I'll definitely crunch those for the next episode when Kyle Larson ends up in victory lane. Just saying. I also did want to add to this. I would have rather had William Byron on this outline over Denny Hamlin, but I think given the stats and just that I wanted to caution bettors with his lack of team this weekend, it was worth mentioning. But William Byron has finished top 15 over his last 3 starts, finished 3rd place at Loudon. The team is definitely turning it on lately, and we saw what they could do the beginning of the year. They've been in the championship 4 numerous times, so do not sleep on William Byron as well. A little bit of a bonus there, but looking ahead to sleepers here, Steven, we got another pretty stacked category. I think you got some Toyotas here that you want to throw into the ring as well.
Yes, I did like what I saw from those Penske Fords, like I just mentioned, but I think that we would be foolish to look past what some of these other drivers have done so far in the first 4 playoff races, and that does include the biggest disappointment from Loudon, and that is Bubba Wallace, who's coming off a 26th place finish and now has back-to-back finishes outside the top 25. But let's not forget how good of a race he had, how good of a start to the playoffs, I should say, that he had at the beginning here that set him up to be in the round of 12. Well, now he is the last seeded driver at minus 27, so it's not quite must-win situation yet. I think they're going to be trying to race for stage points, and they're going to be doing anything in their power to put themselves back in a good points position, obviously. But I think that, it's getting to that point where for Bubba Wallace, that team is certainly going to be thinking about winning, because they've shown race-winning speed over the last several races outside of the last 2, basically. So he is valued at plus 2,500 on FanDuel, which is his best value on any sports book. And he is valued at 8,700 in daily fantasy. And here is why. Not only has he proven that they have race-winning speed this year, he has proven he has race-winning speed at Kansas in 2022, where he also has top 10s in his first 3 next-gen starts at this track. He has a finish of 17th or worse, though, in his last 4 starts here. So that leaves you some cause for concern. If you wrap that all up and you put a bow on it, you get a 16.3 average finish in 7 next-gen starts at Kansas. He had a DNF here in the spring. So in the case of Bubba Wallace, this is a volatile pick. This is a pick where, again, we're depending on how strong the Toyotas have been. And we're depending on the fact that that team needs to have a strong run, not just to try and put themselves in a better points position. But again, it wasn't long ago. We were looking at this team with race-winning speed. And I still believe in Bubba Wallace in that 23 team. I like them as a good sleeper and one of the better values of the week, in my opinion, as well. I just think that he is being undervalued because of the last 2 weeks, which is understandable. I'm Mr. Ride the Hot Hand, and I'm not exactly doing that here. But if you look at the 5-race sample size, it's kind of still one of the hotter drivers. And speaking of hot drivers, I've mentioned Ryan Blaney. I've also mentioned, of course, Christopher Bell. Maybe the hottest driver, Chase Briscoe. He's been money in the bank. We love him for a top 5 every week. He is plus 1,500 on FanDuel, making him the best value on his best value on FanDuel this week. And he is 9,500 in daily fantasy on DraftKings. So for Chase Briscoe, you're coming off a top 10 finish at Loudon. He's now finished top 10 in all 4 playoff starts. And as the results have come, Cole, so have additional points. He is now 12 points to the good, which sounds solid on paper, but he's the 8th seed. You know, he's going to be racing for stage points as well, and that means fantasy points for you, the listener at home. So for Chase Briscoe, he only has, that was the glass half full perspective. The glass half empty perspective is the fact that he has only 1 top 10 in 9 Kansas starts. That was a 4th place finish in the spring. There's the good news. 3 top 5s in the 5 traditional mile-and-a-half starts this season, Cole. So there I give you 2 reasons to hold stock in Chase Briscoe and 1 reason to not hold stock in him because of the 9 Kansas starts and only 1 top 10. But what do we say every time we mention Chase Briscoe? Every single time we mention, you can't fault him for the Stewart-Haas racing stats. The same way we like the analogy, you can't fault Kyle Larson for the Chip Ganassi racing stats. When you go to a team like Hendrick, or in the case of Chase Briscoe, you go to a team like Joe Gibbs, you are going to get the best of the best. And we've seen that come to fruition for Chase Briscoe in the second half of the season. And I think that those numbers on the mile-and-a-half tracks with the 3 top 5s on the 5 traditional intermediate mile-and-a-half tracks this year put in perspective that this is his bread and butter. Love me some Chase Briscoe this week, in spite of the fact that his Kansas results have not been the best. And I love me some Bubba Wallace, too, as the best value among our sleepers category here.
Yeah, I think in the case of Chase Briscoe, for the Toyotas in general, I should say, they put the hammer down in the opening round. They were by far and away the best manufacturer. And Chase Briscoe was a lock for a top 5, maybe even like a top 2 finish at that point, at that rate. But I think what we're seeing the last couple of weeks is that he's become more of a top 10 car as opposed to a top 5 car, mainly because you're seeing the Penske Fords really come to the forefront as the favorites in these races and really challenging for those race wins. And even like the last couple of weeks, the Chevrolets have looked a lot better. They look more competitive, I should say. So I like him as more of a top 10 play with top 5 upside, maybe not the race win, but that goes a long way when making big money bets, obviously. In the case of Bubba Wallace, we know what this team can do. They showed it going into the playoffs and to start the playoffs off. But I think there's something to be said for their recency at Kansas in the mile-and-a-half tracks, because this was a team in 2311 Racing where they were clearly the best team in the field at the mile-and-a-halves, especially Kansas when this car was introduced. But you're seeing it in the results column the last 4 starts, the last 2 years at this track where they have not been able to get it done. So I think there's a little bit of cause for maybe like pessimism. But we know what they can do. They've still proven they can get it done at this track with that race win in 2022. But I think there is a reason why his race win value is such a long shot at plus 2,500, giving him a great value for this weekend. So always worth mentioning Bubba Wallace as a sleeper for the race win, seeing as he got it done here once before. For me, I got to ride the hot hand. I'm a big believer in Team Penske and specifically Joey Logano and his postseason dominance. He is plus 2,200 for the race win per BetMGM, and 9,200 in daily fantasy is a really good value. He's here. He's officially here. He has 3 consecutive top 5 finishes. The last time that happened, 2019. The last time Joey Logano had 3 straight top 5s was 2019, before this car was even introduced. Pretty insane to even comprehend that.
Yeah.
And get this, the last time he had 3 straight top 10s, the first year of this car in 2022. So what this tells me is that this team that has won 2 championships with this current car, they produce when they need to, and that is in the playoffs. We've seen it time and time again, and there's no reason to believe it's going to be otherwise in 2025. You look at his Kansas resume, 3-time winner at this track, all, no surprise, in the postseason. However, the last of those wins came back in 2020, so before this car was introduced. And now why I think he's more of a sleeper for this race compared to the last couple weeks in the 2025 season. He only has a 40.6 top 10 rate at Kansas. And he has a 16.6 average in 32 starts. So you hear those numbers, it's like, not the best. But he has been unbelievable in the fall, in the playoffs at Kansas. An 8.8 average finish in 11 fall starts with this current playoff format, so going back to 2014. In spring starts, 12 spring starts going back to 2014 with this current points format, an 18.3 average finish. So he has a 10 position better average finish in the fall compared to the spring. So that is why I like Joey Logano for this weekend, despite his career stats at Kansas. In the next gen, 3 top 10s, a 14.6 average, and finished top 10 this spring at Kansas. So I like Logano a lot. Just playing on the recency, momentum, how Team Penske has looked in the playoffs so far this season. Fire him up, lock him in. Love Logano.
I mean, he's had such a good postseason career. It's on par with a guy like Jimmy Johnson. I remember when we first started watching the sport, there was all the conversations of, this team was pretty good all year. But then when the playoffs started, when the chase started, they were by far the best team. And not to say that Logano is by far the best team, but they are on such a different level in the postseason every single year, where they're not a complete non-factor during the regular season, but it's on such a completely different level every single year. And you think about the greatest postseason performers in their respective sports, like Tom Brady, Eli Manning, like guys of that caliber. I'm thinking in a football mindset right now. I feel like he's in that air. Like I feel good about Joey Logano everywhere we go, even like you said, in spite of the fact that the Kansas results in his entire career aren't reflecting of somebody you'd expect to come out and win here. But at the end of the day, it's Joey Logano in September.
Right. And that's the mark of a true champion. That's why he's the winningest active driver in terms of championships in the Cup Series with 2 over his last 3 seasons. So he's a lock in my opinion. And I think also, he just scored his 10th top 10 this season. And to have 3 back-to-back
Ridiculous.
For the first time in 6 years, that's pretty telling for how this team's performing. They hear the outside noise. Make no mistake. I know they say that it doesn't matter, but you think they don't know that they aren't performing up to snuff in the beginning of the season and how they performed last year, but despite winning the championship. So they get it done when it matters the most. That's the bottom line. And Kansas is a big one this weekend. My final sleeper for this weekend, let's go with Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott plus 1,500 per bet MGM. A really nice $9,000 in daily fantasy. He was our only Hendrick Motorsports call last week at Loudon, our bold call, because we were very anti-HMS last week, and it worked out. He finished 5th as the top scoring HMS Chevy at New Hampshire. And now, despite the lack of performance outwardly on HMS in the playoffs, he quietly has 2 top 5s over his last 3 starts. So similarly to Logano, but on, I think, a lesser scale, this is a team in a driver in Chase Elliott that knows how to get it done when it matters in the postseason. And you're seeing that once again. He won here in the playoffs back in 2018 at Kansas. And in 19 starts, he has no DNFs. 10.4 average finish is good enough for best in the series. So I know he's one of the younger drivers in the sport right now, but that's a really good sample size, 19 starts. To have no DNFs and a really high floor like 10.4 is something I'm very, very keen on for this weekend, for daily fantasy especially, but definitely for big money bets as well. So do not take those back-to-back top 5s lightly. In the next-gen era, so 7 starts, he's top 15 in all 7 starts, finished 15th this past spring. And he has 4 top 10s with an 11.4 average finish in the next gen, so only 1 spot lower than his career average at this track. That, again, points to a really, really good floor. And I know all the talk's going to be on William Byron, Kyle Larson in the Hendrick camp, but do not sleep on Chase Elliott in this sleepers category.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of on par with Chase Elliott right now as to where I was maybe a few weeks before the playoffs, in that it feels like this top 5 speed every week, maybe top 10 speed, but I want to see leading laps. I want to see like being the dominant driver, which I don't know. Like it feels like in this next gen era, that's kind of behind us with Chase Elliott. Like we've seen that from him earlier in his career. So it set an expectation to where that's what he should be like when he's at his best. But maybe at this point in this car, in this package, this is Chase Elliott. This is who he is. He's a driver that is not going to dominate races, any races really, but he is going to lurk and be somebody that will place top 5, top 3, and maybe come away with a couple wins a year. Like maybe we got a little bit too excited early in Chase Elliott's career. Very possible. Maybe the competition even caught up. So I'm kind of keeping my expectations in check. Like he's never a driver I'm expecting to go out there and lead the most laps and, you know, win every stage and win the race. I think you're hoping that you get a top 5 out of him, and best case scenario, you do see a little glimpse of somebody like Chase Elliott leading laps, but it is put up or shut up time. Like look at the 4 drivers that have won races in the playoffs with Chase Briscoe, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, and Ryan Blaney. Like that to me is 4 championship contenders. You got to win races to win in this format of the NASCAR Cup Series. And, you know, there are drivers, of course, who have gotten by getting to Phoenix without a win, but, you know, you can even get by just only winning at Phoenix. But I think generally speaking, when the field is as diverse with potential champions as it is right now, like I just named 4, and that was not including any Hendrick Chevys and not including Joey Logano, I think that they've got to prove that they can go out there and contend with these teams of the 4 that are caliber I just mentioned. So I like Chase Elliott to an extent. I do like Joey Logano a lot as your 2 sleepers, and then Bubba Wallace and Chase Briscoe, my 2 sleepers. However, Cole, there was a stat you mentioned with Joey Logano that caught my attention. How many top 10s did you say he had?
Top 10s career-wise? This year? 10 top 10s.
What if I was to tell you I can give you another driver that has top 10s this year, 10 top 10s this year, that is significantly cheaper, almost 4 times as cheap for a value pick this week? Is that something you might be interested in?
Absolutely. Let's hear it.
His name is Ryan Preece. We love Ryan Preece on the money stop. His value is at plus 7,000 on DraftKings for the race win and 6,900 in DFS. When we talk about Ryan Preece, he does Ryan Preece things, and that is 10 top 10s this year, coming off of a 15th place finish at Loudon. That was his 18th top 15 this year to go along with the 10 top 10s. He's been such a high floor driver. And in addition to that, coming off his best ever finish at Kansas in the spring of 7th, he also has top 10s in 4 of the 5 intermediate traditional mile-and-a-half tracks this season. So in what's been a breakout and career season for Ryan Preece, his best results, his most consistent results have been at the mile-and-a-halfs, including Kansas, and he has just as many top 10s this year as the guy who we're talking about as the Tom Brady of NASCAR, right? Joey Logano. So I'm not saying that Ryan Preece is Joey Logano, but I'm saying that maybe someday Joey Logano can be Ryan Preece. So give me some Ryan Preece as a very good value this week. And I'm going to give you another driver that is twice as likely of winning this week per DraftKings. That is also still a good value, and that is Carson Hocevar, who's plus 3,500 for the race win. He is only a little bit more expensive in daily fantasy, though, at 7,100, which makes him one of my favorite DFS values this week. Carson Hocevar is coming off his 11th place finish at Loudon, which was his 4th top 15 in a row. So I'm giving you another high floor option here. And out of Carson Hocevar's season, he has now had top 15s and 4 top 10s in 7 of his last 9 starts, which piques my interest. However, again, that is the penny heads up side. Here's the tail side on Carson Hocevar. His best finish at the 5.5-mile tracks this year is 24th. And that includes a 26th place finish at Kansas in the spring, where his career best finish at this track is 20th in 2023. If there's one inkling of success he has had here, it was a Truck Series win that he had there earlier this year. So Carson Hocevar, very consistent driver this year, not good career-wise at Kansas, and not good this year at the 1.5 miles. However, I've said this a lot with Carson Hocevar this year. I just believe in the talent. I believe that I see a driver that is really coming into his own, having a breakout season, and the best is yet to come for Carson Hocevar. He has had several moments this year where he could have won races. It was a disappointment that he wasn't in the playoffs this year. And I think that the luck has got to start coming around at these 1.5-mile tracks. I'm not necessarily betting on it, but if it happens, I will not be shocked by it. In the case of Carson Hocevar, he is the 6th of the 6 drivers I've mentioned for that reason. I'm probably the least excited by him because of the Kansas results he's had in his career. But what does excite me is 4 top 15s in a row and an opportunity where he's running as well as he's been consistently all year to put that luck to bed and get a finish better than 24th at this, traditional 1.5-mile track. So Carson Hocevar is a guy that I've been high on all year. Ryan Preece is a guy that I've been high on all year. They've been 2 of my favorite value picks. And I don't know this for sure, but I'd venture to say they've been my 2 most frequent value picks this year. So as we close in on the most important, part of the season where you really make your money and you get your breadwinning in the playoffs, I'm sticking with my guns. And my guns this year have been Carson Hocevar and Ryan Preece.
Right. And I think the big thing here is that these guys have very high floors. And this category is a who's who of our favorite value picks this weekend for that reason. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned him being the 6th of 6 drivers that you mentioned on this show. I would argue of the 4 value picks that I have outlined here, he's been the one driver of the 4 that's had the most opportunities to win this season. Yeah. And one of those potential wins was at Charlotte, another 1.5-mile track where he was running 3rd and he blew an engine with like 10 to go. And he also think back to his other 1.5-mile starts where he didn't have the finishes to show how well he did. He had a pole at Homestead and led laps in that race. So the speed's been there. Speed's been there all season. You even look back to a few weeks ago to Bristol. He was on the front row with 4 to go and just couldn't get the deal done. But this has been an incredible drive for this number 77 team. I love what I've seen from them. Ryan Preece, I mean, it's all right there. Just 18 top 15s is incredible. 10 top 10s matching the reigning champion is incredible. Just very high floors for both these drivers and drivers that will probably be in this value picks category the remainder of the way, just because they've been that good and that consistent. And they're guys that are just so reliable week in, week out for daily fantasy purposes. For me, another guy that we always mention in this category, and especially as of late, is John Hunter Nemechek. And John Hunter Nemechek, he didn't do us any favors last week. He crashed at Loudon and snapped a 3-race top 15 streak. But this season, he's finished top 20 15 times. And I know top 20 is not the most sexy thing in the world, but for a team like Legacy Motor Club that struggled to finish inside the top 20, that's really, really important number right there. 15 top 20s is really, really good. 8 top 10s as well. That's more than playoff drivers like Josh Berry, Shane Van Gisbergen, Austin Dillon, and Austin Cindric. So this has been a team that's been performed well above expectation. They've also had, again, a very high floor with those top 20s in mind. And you look at earlier this year at Kansas, he finished 10th in that race. That was a career best finish for that team and that driver. And also in the 5.5 this is actually Kansas starts. In 5 Kansas Cup starts, he finished top 20 in 4 of 5 of them. So again, that speaks to a very high floor for this driver in equipment and years where he was racing in lesser equipment. You also look at his resume in the lower series. 2-time winner in the Xfinity Series at Kansas, 1 win in the Truck Series at Kansas. And at the traditional 1.5-mile tracks this year, 3 top 20s out of 5 starts with 2 top 10s as well, Kansas included. So this is a driver that knows how to get it done on this discipline. He's just looked really, really good this year. Been one of the biggest surprises, in my opinion, in 2025. And I just love the outlook for this driver. And quite frankly, Legacy Motor Club as a whole, going forward in 2025 and looking beyond that in 2026. He is plus 15,000 for the race win. We're not really going to touch that. But $6,200 in daily fantasy. I don't know how he's being undervalued so significantly. I feel like he's been that value the entire season pretty much, but that's one that you almost want to consider a lock given his prior success in the lower series at this track and overall on the mile and a halfs in 2025 as well. And then finally, another guy that's made an appearance in this section, ironically, quite a few times this season, it's going to be our third Hendrick Chevy. So for a team that we were very anti to open the playoffs, we have three mentioned on this show. Alex Bowman, plus 3,000 for the race win per DraftKings, $7,800 in daily fantasy, coming off a top 15 at Loudon after finishing 8th at Bristol. So there's been speed in this camp despite missing the round of 12. He also had a top 10 average running position at this race in Loudon. So the finish not really indicative of how they ran in this race fully. He also has 15 top 10s this season. That's tied for third most in the series. Very under the radar there. So despite, again, not making this next round of the playoffs and having a very underwhelming showing at that as of late, he's had the speed to back up the results overall this season. And he also, this is a really cool stat here, he joins Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, and Christopher Bell, 3 championship favorites, as the only drivers with top 10s in 6 of 7 next-gen starts at Kansas. However, asterisk here, he's only made 6 starts due to injury, so he's finished top 10 in every single next-gen start that he's made at Kansas, making him an excellent value, once again, at plus 3,000 for the race win and $7,800 in daily fantasy. He has the second best average finish at Kansas with this current car at 6.8. Finished 5th in the spring, and he's placed 11th or better in 12 of his last 13 Kansas starts with the best finish of 2nd. So this is a driver that stood the test of time despite equipment and just other variables in having speed in the results at Kansas. So I like this driver quite a bit as a very under-the-radar value, once again, coming off a top 15 day at Loudon where he was a top 10 car.
All right, so if you've been zoned out for the last 37 minutes, listen up. These are the 12 drivers we have highlighted, and I'll throw William Byron in because he was an honorable mention. So that was 13 drivers. You got Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe, Alex Bowman, John Hunter Nemechek, Carson Hocevar, and Ryan Preece. Getting that field of 12.5 down to 6, Cole. I'm going to go with a few of my favorites. My favorite of the week was Ryan Blaney. My favorite sleeper was Chase Briscoe, and my favorite value was Ryan Preece. What do you got?
I've got an all Hendrick Motorsports sweep. So my favorite's going to be Kyle Larson. Sleeper is going to be Chase Elliott, and my value pick will be Alex Bowman for Kansas.
Any loose change? Anything we forgot?
I mean, if you want, we could talk about Tyler Reddick again. I feel like that was our loose change last week, so there's not much to really talk about.
I'm uninspired. I'm uninspired by him.
Again, like we said last week with Kyle Larson and the Hendrick Chevys, we needed to see it to believe it in order to have some confidence in betting them going forward. He finished 21st at Loudon, and he had pretty good numbers at this track going in. So again, although he's won at Kansas before and he's historically done very well here, I mentioned with your Bubba Wallace analysis, the field's caught up to their speed at Kansas, and that's just even more ammunition to not have any confidence in Tyler Reddick going forward, especially for this weekend. So other than that, I don't really have much unless you wanted to add any loose change here, Steven.
No, that's all I got. That's all I got this week. Let's move on to our favorite big money bets. And let's start by mentioning it was a mixed bag of results last week. We had Joey Logano in the top 5 at plus 110, which cashed. We had Joey Logano again making us smart by finishing better than 8.5 on the app Grid Rival, along with Ryan Preece finishing better than 15.5. So those were our 3 prop bets that hit last week. One of ours that did not hit was Chase Briscoe to finish in the top 5, which I can feel okay with because I feel like that's never a bad bet. Even like last week where it didn't hit, I feel like it's still not a bad bet. And we had Brad Keselowski, 2 props that did not hit last week as well. So turning the page, rattling off our favorite big money bets this week. Cole, what are you thinking?
All right, so I've got 3 lined up here for big money bets in terms of prop finishes. The first one's going to be Christopher Bell, top 5 plus 120. This team, again, like you said, they've been one of the best in the postseason. I think they've caught up to their teammate, Chase Briscoe, who was profiling as by far and away the best driver in the playoffs. And I think playing off the runner-up finish at Kansas earlier this year, that is a great one to consider. I love Ryan Blaney top 5 plus 105 above even payout for a guy that's finished top 5 his last 4 starts and 5 of his last 6 and coming off a race win. Why not Ryan Blaney at Kansas, despite not having to worry about points for this weekend? And then I'll go a little outside the box here. I don't really usually advocate for top 3s. I know you're going to be very anti this, but they're giving Kyle Larson's top 3 prop at even payout plus 100. I just feel very strongly that this team is going to come out, put an ass whipping down, and make you guys some big money this weekend at Kansas, coming off a win here in the spring and a win in 2 of his last 3 starts here.
All right. I like that. Head-to-head parlay that we had missed one last week, Cole. We're not going to discuss any this week because it's just not where the value is. Our DFS lineup this week, I do want to mention, I say this probably every other episode, but we obviously record these episodes early to maximize value for you ahead of the weekend because odds obviously do change like they do in any sport, but I think it can happen pretty significantly in NASCAR based on practice and qualifying, and that's especially true with DFS because it's kind of the inverse. The prices of the drivers don't change, but their starting positions do, and so there's more to go off of. So keeping that in mind, why don't you give us this week's daily fantasy lineup?
Yes. So I like I said at the top of my favorite analysis, I think the premium to pay for Kyle Larson as the ace in your lineup is going to be one that's well worth the price. So Kyle Larson is our ace for this lineup. We've got the 3 Hendrick Chevys also that were mentioned on this outline at length in Chase Elliott as our second most expensive driver, and then Alex Bowman as kind of our middleman. Once again, for the second straight week, maybe even third straight week, we have John Hunter Nemechek as our foundation because he's just been that good. And he's also a 3-time winner in the lower series at this track in Kansas. Carson Ozavar is our second least expensive. Again, 4 straight top 15s. He's had speed on these style tracks in 2025. He's come so close to getting a win in general in 2025. I like him a lot as a good high floor pick. And then we also have Bubba Wallace as maybe our boomer bust guy, as our third most expensive, right behind Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott. So I think there's a pretty good consistency in this lineup. My only, again, apprehension would kind of be Bubba Wallace, but you're grasping at straws in that price range when you build this lineup. And how I went about building this lineup, by the way, I went with putting Kyle Larson first, prioritizing him, and then kind of building up from there with the average remaining salary balance to build on. So usually my tactic is I'll start with that average remaining salary and I'll kind of build from there. But when there's a guy like Kyle Larson that's such a heavy favorite and so dominant at this track like Kansas, I prioritized him first and kind of went from there.
All right, so hypothetically, we have a $50 budget that you, the listener, can mirror. So let's say you've got $50 in your pocket. Cole and I are going to give you our favorite bets of the week, what we would do with that hypothetical $50. And I'm going to ride with the 2 guys that I think are, in my opinion, the championship favorites. If I had to guess right now, I'm going to do a little gardening, sprinkle $10 on a Ryan Blaney top 5, $10 on a Christopher Bell top 5. And I think I want to throw $5 on one of them for the win. Pick your poison. I'll go Ryan Blaney. We've seen so many times drivers winning back-to-back and even back-to-back-to-back this year. Why not Ryan Blaney to do it in the round of 12? So give me $5 on Blaney to win, 10 on him to finish in the top 5 rather, and 10 to finish in the top 5 for Christopher Bell as well.
All right, very nice. So I think I'm going to kind of combine one of the ones you just mentioned as well.
Okay.
So last weekend, I had a friend ask for some betting advice, what my prop bet would be or parlay would be for the race. And I was like, you know what? Let's get creative here. So I wanted to parlay a finisher prop with an anytime touchdown score. I looked at practice and qualifying. By the way, very important to look at the lap times and all those things and qualifying to get a better gauge on who's going to be a threat on Sundays or whenever the race may be when making your bets. So I noticed that William Byron had great speed on the short run, the long run, qualified well. He had a above even payout for a top 5. So I put him in my parlay for one leg. And my other parlay prop was Garrett Wilson, anytime touchdown score.
Whoa.
Jets, Jets, baby. So I told them to throw $15 on this parlay, Garrett Wilson to score a touchdown and William Byron to score a top 5. $15 won them $95. So
dang.
Unfortunately, the anytime touchdown props are not out currently for every game this weekend, so I don't have a specific player to mention. but I would like to say Christopher Bell top 5 prop at plus 120. Parlay that with any touchdown scoring prop that you feel confidently in for this weekend. And that's a really good way to make some money, man, because you're not relying on like multiple touchdown scorers or multiple finisher props. It's a really easy one to hit. And if you know your stuff and you listen to our advice, it's likely that it's going to hit. And the payouts are just so nice on those, because if you have that anytime touchdown scores, they range from like above even payout at plus 100 to like plus 210, which was what Garrett Wilson's was last week. So I would definitely advocate that for like $15. And then I'll probably throw $10 on Kyle Larson to finish top 10 or top 3, because I do feel confidently that he will win this race or score a podium finish. So that would net you an additional $10. You're doubling that. So give me an anytime touchdown score parlayed with Christopher Bell top 5, and then $10 on a Kyle Larson top 3 finish.
I love that. I'm going to go down a small rabbit hole here. And I think it's important when you're making an anytime touchdown bet. We're going to veer away from NASCAR for just a minute. When I'm going for an anytime touchdown bet, I like to look at every single game, look at what the highest game total is. So the highest over under in any game this week on a given week. I want to parlay an anytime touchdown with that game. So for this week, that game would be the Colts and the Rams. So that has an over under of 49.5. So I'm thinking like a Jonathan Taylor or Puka Nacua. That would be like the two guys I think are most likely to score. So if I'm going a top 5 on C-Bell parlayed with any touchdown, I'm going to go with one of those guys, JT or Puka. So that's just some general betting advice. If you're going anytime touchdowns, choose from a game where there is at least projected to be a lot of scoring. It doesn't always work that way. But as we move forward, Cole, before we drop the jack on this most important NASCAR betting stop of the day, let's give you our race winner and sleeper picks. Let's put our money where our mouth is and be very serious right now. So with that being said, why don't you kick us off here?
Oh, you know what? I'll be courteous here. I think I went first last week, Steven.
Oh, did you? Okay.
It's actually your turn, yeah.
Okay, thanks. All right, thanks for the reminder. I'm going to go Ryan Blaney. I said it before, and I'll say it again. I think that, a lot of times when a driver wins multiple races in a row, you expect it's not going to happen again in the same season. But I think this is the season of that happening. Like we've seen Christopher Bell repeat. We've seen Kyle Larson repeat. And I guess you can kind of say we've seen SVG repeat on the road courses. I think it's Ryan Blaney's turn. I think that Joey Logano's getting a lot of buzz. The Gibbs Toyotas are getting a lot of buzz. I think that it's Ryan Blaney's time to establish himself as not one of the favorites, but to establish himself as the championship favorite coming out of race 5 of the playoffs.
I love it. Yeah, he's definitely going to be a top 5 lock in my book. So again, that top 5 prop plus 105 payout, one you got to hammer this weekend. For me, my winner's got to be Kyle Larson. I've been tooting his horn the entire show. Again, SpeedFreaks Mojo is very real. Talking to him this weekend, or tonight actually, at Chase Field, repping the Mets colors, by the way, in that tight wild card race. So I love Kyle Larson this weekend. Give me him as my race winner. And I'll go with Carson Hocevar, or as we like to call him on SpeedFreaks, Kosovar, for my sleeper this weekend at Kansas.
All right, I'll give you that one. I'm going to go with John Hunter Nemechek as my sleeper. I'm continuing to double down on the Toyotas this week. So it is John Hunter Nemechek and Ryan Blaney for me, and it is Kosovar and Kyle Larson for you. I'm excited to see what comes of Kyle Larson at Chase Field. I think that, hopefully it's the Diamondbacks' last home game. Doubling down on your Mets mojo and your SpeedFreaks mojo. It's going to be a crazy week. It's going to be a crazy week in baseball. It's going to be a crazy week in the NFL, and I think especially at Kansas. Cole, final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Pumped to get out to Chase Field. Let's go Mets, baby. And again, I think, man, that parlay with the anytime touchdown scorer and either C-Bell or Brian Blaney is going to be a really good moneymaker this weekend. So just keep that in mind when you're placing your wagers for this weekend. And again, we like to get these shows out before the odds adjust due to practice and qualifying, but that's where you're going to really know who your players are, is looking at those lap times and looking at the qualifying results to see who's going to really be up front on Sunday. So I'll tweet out from the account what the best bets may be, who looks good in the long runs, the short runs, and we'll keep that in mind for Sunday. But I do like bringing in the NFL analysis with the the NASCAR analysis, because that's a good way to bring in some new viewers. People
Yeah.
love betting on their anytime touchdowns and the NFL. It's the giant of pro sports. So we'll do more of that. I like it a lot.
Yeah, maybe we can make a tradition out of this. So that
maybe we can get Mike Clay on the show. Big NASCAR fan.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, let's get Mike Clay on the show. That would be huge. We need to get Mike Clay to listen to the money stop first. And then I think he's such a big numbers guy. He'd be all in on the money stop. And then we can get him on here, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
I think that's a move. All right. It is Kansas. There's no place like Kansas, and there's no place like the money stop. You can't win your bets. You can't win the week. You can't win some money without your most important stop, the money stop. How could you win the race without the money stop? And how could you win your bets without the money stop? We'll end on that note. That's Cole. I'm Steven. We're the Cusumano brothers. You, the listeners, are Freak Nation. You are the Money Stop Mafia. Hopefully you're banking out with us because there are only 5 weeks left to do so after this one. This is the Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas this Sunday, and we hope you're banking us. We hope you're tailing us and going to make a lot of money this week. So we'll see you guys next week in the cutoff race of the round of 12 in the NASCAR playoffs.